on
This
the
conference
agenda,
will now be recorded.
I'd like to move number 6, which is new business, to the end of the meeting after number 9. And at that time, we'll go into executive session, as this is a personnel matter. Any question on that?
Nope.
All right. So the first item here we have is approval of July 15th meeting. I have a motion on that.
I'll make that motion. Peter Johnson.
Is there a second?
I can second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the minutes will stand approved. Next item is trial balance. Ron, can you go over that?
Sure, Chad. I just gotta, see if I can pull it. There it is. I'm sorry, I got so many papers, but yeah, it's pretty much our standard. It's obviously not audited since it's not the year end, but you can see it. Particular of interest, because I'm going to talk about it in the finance committee, is the we have several CDs, which most of them expire within the certainly next 6 months, if not the next 3 or 4. Also the cash and time deposit, which is, the LPL cash account, the CD and the treasury bill did mature. And so that is now sitting in cash. The rest of the balance sheet is pretty standard. I mean, pretty much what it's been. There's some money down below due from microfund. That is the in relation to the building in Sharon Springs that we still have. So that's why that's up there a little bit. So I guess just remember what the LPL cash account is for the finance committee. And other than that, I'll just take any questions, but it's pretty much the same.
We need a motion on this?
No, just acknowledging it was, Sarah will have it in the minutes that we discussed it. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions?
No.
Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Committees of the agency, finance.
Well, under finance,
Ron?
we have, go ahead, Chet. I'm sorry, we have the minutes first.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the draft September 21st minutes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, minutes will stand approved. Next item on this is the budget versus actual.
And this is for, this is for the 6-month period. Just on the revenue side, things are matching up as far as the grant income received, with Sarah working on the grants, and also our rentals are fine. The 2 that we do have, our office and the Beekman building in Sharon, as I call it. They've, everybody's as projected, everything. And obviously then we get to the project fees, and we have yet to have a project this year. American Recycling, if it happens, at least it's been delayed at minimum. Although we are still talking about it, and I'll mention it later. So there's been 0 project fees. On the expense side, you'll see it's higher than normal, basically due to PPP grants that we gave out, which are close to 6,000, is 5,951 is the exact number. Some of the depreciation is 3,400, but also then you got to the legal fees, which is unusual for us to spend this much on. And hopefully it's one time and we're done. And the agency's done for a while with this, but to break down that number of 19,720, 11,510 was solar, and 3,750 was for general matters over the year for the 12 months in the calendar year basis. And then 4,460 was for updating the policy manual, which was unfortunate expense, but it was projected, and it came in so far on the lower side. It's almost done. So that was expected, and it also shouldn't happen for, well, hopefully quite some time, at least 5 years or whatever, depending on when the policies need to be updated. So due to that, that column, which was projected as a modest 500 or so dollars for the year, took a big hit. It really didn't, well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the solar took a lot of his time up, and there's a fee. So essentially that, you know, makes the cost part of cost versus actual not looking so good, but that's what happened. And I can take any comments or any questions.
Ron, are we judged by this budget versus actual in some way by the state, or? And the reason why I ask that is that, you know, we have project fee that we budgeted for American Recycling. If we're budgeting that for 2022, we may want to reconsider if we don't see any action in that area and not anticipate revenues, especially. I mean, so that if we are judged, it doesn't look so terrible.
You know, I guess to answer directly, I'd have to follow up on it. And I know in the past, you know, a projection is just that, and you can, and I'm sure it's acceptable that things don't happen and whatnot. Now, whether you should say anything about it is the part I don't know. I mean, we know it. I mean, should we make them aware of it? You know, the ABO, I'm not sure. So I'll have to follow through on it. I'll have to ask.
Well, are we going to budget American Recycling project fees for 2022, for example? And if, as you say, that you don't know where it is, so is there a basis to budget for that revenue?
You know, at this point in time, Joe, I mean, there was a basis 6 months ago, but, you know, that basis is now in limbo. They've actually picked up with some of their activity, but you still don't know for sure. I mean, I know they're talking a grant, and I know they've gone through some hoops, and they've done some cost analysis, and they're active internally. And whether that means there's actually something going to happen on the ground, you know, I don't know, because we've seen it before. But I am in conversations with them, not weekly by any means, but every so often. So I guess, Joe, I'll have to talk to him, you know, keep before the next meeting, try to get some kind of more of a target date before we go and vote on it or discuss it again.
Ben, do you have any additional input on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a budget's a budget, right? And it's a target, but particularly in the last 2 years, I think it's been hard to, you know, budget for anything and hope it held true. So I don't think I'd put a lot of weight into missing the budget or seeing the PPP stuff on there.
Any other questions on this?
That's the budget versus actual. The investment side, Chet, is and it's something just to run by you. I know we've talked about it in brief before. You know, like LPL account, going back to the balance sheet, it had the 300 and change on it. It was 2 investments at one point, a CD and a treasury bill, which are both close to 2. You know, a week or 2 ago, 10 days ago, maybe it was, you know, I could get locally maybe or even actually with the LPL account, which is more national, that's through MBT. Maybe 0.2%. So that's 0.002 on the money, with 2 basis points. But and if you went out and it was looking like 18 months to do that, I don't know what I have two scenarios, I guess is what I'm asking, and see which one we want to do. Do we start trying to ladder it in and take what we can get now, no matter what? Right now, obviously 300 sitting there making, instead of 0.2, 0.0001 or whatever it is in the money market. Or do we wait and see what the month or two the market brings as it's starting to readjust a little bit? And I guess there's a benefit. I guess there's pros and cons to both ways. I mean, if we actually lock it in now, I mean, the penalty of getting out of it probably is minuscule anyway.
Yeah, nothing.
And 0.2, I guess, is better than 0.01. So any thoughts or the direction we want to take? It's almost a no-win situation.
They're not going to change that much anyway, Ron, are they?
Well, probably not. Even if things start going up, there's always a lag anyway.
Yeah.
You know, no. Even if the Treasury bills go yesterday, I think they were 1.7 on a new one, or 1.78. So they budged a little bit, but that doesn't mean it's filtered down to the the retail customer. So maybe, for lack of a better thing to do, is maybe just start filtering it in now, and over 3 months, at least get to 0.2, and maybe it'll get to 0.3 by the time.
That sounds like a good course of action to me. Anybody else have any input on this?
I would say just do it.
Yeah, I think even going to 0.03 is a little bit more income than before. It's hard. This could move rapidly. It's hard to say. But as you use the term laddering up, we will have some CDs maturing over the course of the next 6 months. I would try to get the best deal on the stuff in the LPL right now, just to earn a little bit more. So
we'll do that. I'll go forward with that.
Any other discussion on the investments? Hearing none, we'll move on to adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I'll second.
Should be sorry, Peter. It should be Wanda, Joe, or Ben.
It's Peter that made the motion.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I can second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting of the Finance Committee is adjourned. Next item on the agenda is old business SSI.
I couldn't rephrase it any better, except old business. Okay, here we go. Where to start? Obviously, last winter, they asked to change the pilot. We used the word, and I have myself, extend it. It really wasn't extended. It was changed for 2 years to a different payment structure, and to be able to get to a point where they complete the job, because it was supposed to be completed by then. So we eventually, everybody, the municipalities concurred, and we went and did, okay, you can have 2 more years to get this done, except at the end of the first year, which is 12/31/21, you're supposed to secure financing. I wrote that in a letter which Mr. Cho signed. By that time it was June. He did pay our fees, and and the legal fees and any related matters. So he did follow through on that. He signed a letter saying he agreed to that condition. At the time the letter was written, I guess an assumption was, I put the phrase in secure financing. Really didn't have the phrase in there, proof of financing. We really thought it was going to be through a bank. Since then, and since year end has happened, he, as you know, he submitted to us the copies of bank statements. There's 3 bank statements in there, and I apologize. I thought there was, the way I read it was 2 initially. But there's 1 page back to back, which his son Richard has pointed out to me. And the money in those accounts, as shown on paper, totaled above the $3.5 million they estimate need to be completed. It's 4.187586 to be exact. Anyway, that is what they have given us to date. They've also talked about the partner/investor coming in. That document or agreement has not been formalized. They expect it to be formalized by the end of this month. And that, of course, not only relates to trying to get the project done, but it also, the fellow for the firm has some of that money that you saw in the bank account. So that sort of brings us up to date in a snapshot sort of way. And I open it up for comments or questions, I guess, as we proceed. The end result we're trying to get to today anyway is to whether we want to continue with the pilot and say they met the conditions, or end the pilot, or ask for more information if that is necessary to make the decision. So that's the goal and the backup as I know it. And I'm sure everybody has comments based on some of the past 2 weeks. So I leave it up to everybody.
Ron, the entity that we're dealing with is SSI. And we asked that SSI, that entity, have their financing secured by December 31st. And based on all of the email and the bank statements, that entity does not have the money. There are other entities that have the money. We don't know to what extent they relate to SSI. We don't know what their situation is. So, I mean, I don't know. At this point, they have not met the obligation that they signed off on securing financing by any means. I mean, so I don't know what else to say. I don't see how they have met their obligation. To me, the question is, well, what do we do about it? But I don't think the first question is, did they meet their obligation? We extended it, and I say they didn't.
Anyone else have any thoughts on this?
I agree with Joe.
Oh, I mean, this is Jeff. I would agree with Joe that they certainly have not met it as SSI. And even if they were, we were allowed to go forward, they could still have a problem completing the project. I mean, to be able to start construction here in February, and I mean, materials are going to be an issue. I just don't see it happening.
I think it's another Band-Aid on a hemorrhage that they're trying to put there just to appease us in a way. I don't know. And it makes me laugh that one statement has Bank of Hope is the name of the bank.
Have they paid all their legal fees and administrative fees to us at this point?
Yes, Ben, they did. Yep.
So they're current. One thing in the string of emails you sent us, Ron, was that they weren't going to achieve a completion
of year end. And I think our agreement with them now, based on your what you had mentioned, was the tax benefits begin at the end of this year, correct?
Yes, yeah, Ben, so what, I mean, the pilot, of course, has been going on for several years now. Let's say 6 or 7. I got to go back and check. Anyway, so when they asked for, in 2021, the pilot was going to jump fairly significant. And that was, at the time we implemented the pilot, it was because it was going to be done and up and running. And, business was going to be ongoing, and therefore the taxes were going to increase. You've already started out, the initial startup period was done. Well, of course, since that didn't happen, they didn't want that jump in the pilot payments to occur because it isn't up and running. So they asked to lower them for 2 years. Back to, quite frankly, it's fairly close to what the taxes would be without a pilot. It might be just slightly more, actually, the pilot payments than the taxes. So anyway, it backed it back down to, in 21 and 22 to a lower level than what was in the initial pilot. In 20, and with the intent at that time to go back to the original chart of payment in lieu of taxes for 23 and onward. And in 23, it jumps up back to where, it makes another significant jump. Significant, I mean like $50,000, $60,000 higher. I mean, it does jump up. And so at the end of this year, 22, construction wasn't going to finish in 21 when we extended this, or changed it, excuse me. I shouldn't use the word extended again. But 22 is going to be the construction season in theory. And then, they'd be up and running, and 23 would resume the pilot payments as scheduled. So I don't know if it's a long-winded answer, Ben, if that's enough, but so the pilot payment, basically we made a new, because of the change in the pilot, or the request, the pilot payments changed for 21 and 22, and it bought them 2 more years to get completed, the construction and up and running.
So as it sits today, the pilot ends in 2022 then, right? With us doing nothing.
If they don't complete the project, it would end in 2022. If they don't complete it by 12/31. I mean, for the agreement. If they were completed, it runs for another 8 years.
Okay.
Which they're telling us they're not going to achieve.
Right, based on my, after, I think, Ben, your comment and Joe's comments, I emailed those questions to them. And right, what you saw near the end of that chain was it was going to be started in this year, but it was going to take a year to year and a half to finish, based on what they said yesterday in an email.
It sounds like we're going to have to address that at some point.
Ron, did you have an opportunity to talk to Mayor and the other entities at all?
No, I've tried to get a hold of Doug, and he didn't get back to me yet. Usually he does pretty promptly, but it didn't happen. I did talk to Denise, Deputy Mayor, and there's certainly been conversations in the village, on the project. Doug's one comment was he was at least encouraged by the fact that another person was coming in, but that's essentially all he really said in the email. And then we're waiting for one-on-one conversation. And Denise didn't, we talked about the gist of things and the building permit and, where they stood as far as approvals for the village. And also there's another, and we also touched upon the village. Well, SSI ran a grant through the village, or the village was the sponsor of it through Empire State. That grant is still available. I just talked to Empire State a few weeks ago. I don't know how much longer it'll be available. They've kept it open for quite some time now. And, you know, eventually it'll be swept up and moved on to another project somewhere else in the region. And I have to get back to the director on that, where we stand anyway, or where the project stands as soon as I can, or am able to. So
What is the size of the ESD grant? That was the CFA thing from a few years ago.
yeah,
Is
several
it-
years ago here, yes, and it was $1 million.
Okay.
20 up to $1 million. I should say it's $1 million. It's 20% of the project cost, not to exceed $1 million.
And that's
It's Sorry?
reimbursable.
Yes, so they'd
Okay.
have to approve expenses and then have them ESD approve them, and then get the money back.
Luck.
It would seem to me that if we're going to move on with this, we ought to put in some other stipulations that we expect them to meet. And I don't know, is Sandy Mackay still working with them? Ron?
I'm not sure, Chet. He seems to be called once in a while. He hasn't briefed me or talked to me about anything in a couple months now. They do talk about Clemens still working for them, you know, on the drawing side, the building aspect.
Well, it seems to me if we don't keep their feet to the fire with some type of deadlines as they approach the end of the year, nothing's going to happen. So if anything, I think we should put some guidelines in there that we expect them to meet. I mean, if we let it go and we gave them till the end of the year, we had told them that they need to pay their project and fees. We didn't exactly tell them how we expected them to come up with their financing, although we assumed it would be a bank, but we didn't say specifically that it had to be a bank. Even though I agree with you, what they have with Joe, what they have come up with is really not financing that would be under SSI.
What happens if we let the agreement sit expired until we come up with a new agreement?
I think it would just be a decision to do that, Ben. I don't think it would be anything illegal or lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we want to be the final nail in the coffin on this project, right? I think we want to try to do what we can to help them, but I think we're all in agreement. They didn't meet the terms and conditions of the agreement that expired 12/31. So we need a new agreement. I think it's probably better if we approach this kind of with everything in mind, right? They're not going to hit the year-end deadline to finish the project. So we need to go back to the table on that too with them. So I think it's trying to figure everything out and giving them a hard deadline to bring this investor or partner on board with all the legal documentation and all the money in an account that's set aside specifically for the project, so that we know the money's there by whatever the date is, 3/31. And they have until, you know, the end of 2023 to complete the project. And this is kind of the last opportunity for them to renegotiate this with us. And if they don't do it, then, you know, we're not going to come back to the table again. But this renegotiation has to be supplemented with a fee, and a fee for Joe Scott to go through all the legal process of doing this. And they need to pay all those fees up front.
Mhm.
And I think what Ben said is not just the financing, and I think he raised a good point. it's financing SSI specifically for that project. We don't care that they have, you know, monies available for other reasons, but we want whatever we need for that project to be financed. And I think that's I like the way Ben said it, detail, you know, specifically for the project.
Right, they're likely working with the GC, so we should be able to get a copy of the construction budget, so we know what the cost of the project is. We can escrow that money or earmark that money somehow.
And somehow we also need to have some legal document if in fact he's bringing in another investor where he's actually a part of SSI.
That would have to be done. That would certainly have to be done if we get that far. If it becomes that far. I like, you know, going back, just piggybacking on Joe's comments. Yeah, I think, you know, let's just say you use 331. If that's the case, you know, I don't think we have to wait to end this if they don't meet milestones. You know, if the milestone of 331 is X, then that's what it is. You know, it's not like you have 18 months or 16, 15 months or whatever. Do it all. You have to meet each objective which obviously the first important one is the partnership and money by X date. I mean, that's one method, I guess, but I don't know how we feel about that.
Yeah, I agree, the milestones are good.
Yeah, could we say in the meantime that the pilot has ended, and however it could be resurrected if, and then and this way we don't have to do anything to end it. So in other words, as far as we're concerned right now, the pilot is ended. You did not meet what you were supposed to do. And then we say, however, going forward, if, I don't know if that makes any sense.
It's something I've actually thought about, Joe. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'd have to run it by legal to see what the consequences are. I believe, like, gut tells me that you might have to, if you end it, you have to recapture what's already been given as a benefit, or what they've already taken as a benefit, not necessarily given, and then start over. So except for that one little, it's a little, that little like recapture moment, if you could delay that because the new project might start up, you know, it's a different scenario than if you have to go and end, recapture, start over. And I don't know that answer, Joe. I have to ask Joe Scott.
Well, we don't have to recapture immediately. In other words, if the pilot ends and we give them, you know, we don't have to recapture. If the pilot ends on today, we don't have to start recapturing tomorrow. We could see how they're doing, and if they don't meet these deadlines, then we recapture.
I know what you're saying. I'll have to go follow through on it. I'll have to go find the answer, the legal answer out.
So how much would we be recapturing? What's their penalty on this?
80.
You have to recapture any benefits. So that would mean, you know, our three benefits: mortgage recording tax, which doesn't exist. They didn't get any benefit there. Real property taxes, there's probably a small amount of benefit they got, although I'd have to recalculate all the 5 years.
Sales tax.
I don't think there's much there. The third and last benefit is the sales tax, and that is where they got a benefit from. That could be anywhere, Chet. I'd have to go back to the forms or the reports that they filled out, you know, $60,000 to $80,000.
Mm.
And it would be recaptured and given back to the state.
Which
Well,
would probably take 1 or 2 decades to accomplish.
For sure.
But could we use that sort of as a cudgel and say, let's, we're thinking of ending this unless there is hard proof of the partnership and funds being available by March 31st. at which point we would then not only end the pilot completely, but move to recapture the benefits that you have received. So just to give them a little bit of a lifeline, but also to insist that we really have to have some proof that things are moving in the right direction. That's just a suggestion, but it seems that if we end it, that we would we would have to move towards the recapture, which would, I think, maybe complicate things rather than simplify them.
You're also suggesting, Peter, that in addition to coming up with the financing, that we have some type of project plan of when things are going to be completed.
Yeah, exactly. And, as I think both Ben and Joe mentioned, the chances of them, unless they have all sorts of construction material stored away someplace, they're not going to get this thing done in 2022. And they're certainly not going to get it done based on the original projections as to cost. All of those things are now going to be significantly higher. So, I guess what we're saying is we need to be realistic, and they need to be realistic. But I think that the first step is hard proof that the other investors' money is going to be used for SSI. And we need that by March 31st.
Yeah, and maybe some commit. We require some commitment on their part that this project is finished. I mean, I think they can say anything with these letters and verifications of deposits and all that. But if we say, the project has to be here, the project has to be the next step and all that, I mean, we can visually see that, and we can push that forward. And if they do not meet that, then we'll start our end of it and pushing them to ending the pilot.
Yeah.
So we can measure some of those progress in that building if even with these numbers. I don't feel really comfortable with all those numbers that they supply, but visually see the project moving forward, I think that's a good thing.
Well, if 3/31 is the date to complete the partnership and have the cash in an account, right, for this project, earmarked for the project, if it's escrow or otherwise, and maybe 6/30 is the date to complete, to provide final construction plans and a final construction budget from the general contractor, whoever that may be. And if we have concerns about the budget, we can have a third party review the budget and look at the plans. That's stuff folks do all the time. And so, maybe we let them know that we're going to have it reviewed, and that cost is going to be on them to have done. But we need to have comfort that the budget's the budget, and the cash in the account is going to cover what needs to be done.
What are we going to look at as? I agree. What are we going to look at as a completion date? It's certainly not going to hit 12/31 this year.
No.
It has to be a certificate of occupancy by the end of next year, probably.
I would add that I'm a little nervous about when Ron said he talked to Denise Kelly and didn't get back from Doug Plummer, the permits. I mean, based on the history as I understand it, the SSI changes their plans all the time and proceeds with the change without getting the necessary permits. So as part of this, I would like to have the village or somebody sign off that this plan, there is a permit for this particular plan. This is what they're going to do, and we're okay with it. We have the necessary permits, because if you don't have the permits and somebody comes in, that ends it. So I think we really need assurance about the permits too.
She did say, Joe, I didn't add that. Denise did say there's no active permit right now.
Oh,
Really?
So you're right.
That's a huge deal.
Right. So it goes back to the plan.
When was the last one?
Permit.
When did the last permit end? Or was it never approved?
They got approval for, but I don't know, Wanda. I think that was, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. I don't know.
It could have been
God.
something more simple, like a demo permit or something like that, that they had originally, right? To just go in and do remediation. They're probably
Oh,
not
there
getting
was-
It had to be that permit because they did all that work.
There was quite a bit of discussion that they changed the project to include small trailer huts or whatever. And someone, either the village or the town, objected to that. And I thought that was changed. I don't know if that was part of original permit or not, that they were deviating
It
from.
wasn't part of the original one yet. I do know that. And I do know the village did not agree with it.
That's a couple years ago, isn't it? A year and a half ago?
So is it by 6:30, they need to have all approvals, planning, zoning, town, village, whoever needs to be involved, finalize construction budget from the GC, and, permit set drawings essentially in place. And I think we got to talk to our partners, right? We got to talk to the town and the village and make sure that this plan is something they agree to. If they're saying, no, we don't want to extend this thing anymore, they haven't done what they need to do, then maybe we're back here next month talking about it again. But
Yeah, I agree. That's probably one of the first things we should attempt to. There's no sense going forward if they're not going to approve of what they are. I mean, they're the one, we're basically working in their behalf.
right.
And
Yeah,
they
we're here to
don't want us to.
They've never been awful pleased with their project.
Say that again, Wanda?
They've never been really pleased. The village has never been really pleased with that project and how they're operating it and the like. So maybe it's a good place to start. Maybe they'll help us with our process.
So at least we have kind of an outline of what we're thinking might be an appropriate way to proceed.
I think that's a good plan.
All right.
So Ron, how are we going to propose this to them at this point?
What I think I'll do is I'll take those dates and the comments related to each date, make a draft letter and then flip it to everyone for comment. I am trying to, Joe Scott and I he just emailed me, so we'll talk to him this afternoon or tomorrow. I won't have it, I don't know if I'll have it done by then with the meetings, but anyway, that's what I'll do. I'll put a draft together and then everybody can make comment in case, and then we can correct it if need be. And then I'll make sure I run it through Joe again. I guess go from there if that's okay.
All right.
Like a plan.
Good.
Everyone in favor of that?
Yes.
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 Okay, great.
And Plan B is to buy dynamite and ship it to the village of Sharon Springs.
It might be easier to start with a hole, right?
Right.
Ground
Hey.
up.
All right. Can we move to the next item on the agenda? Original number 7.
Yeah, I
American-
guess I mentioned this briefly before, American Recycling, I'm hoping, we're starting to talk again a little bit. And their project is slightly changed. If they indeed go through with the project, they're looking at, doing a building for their trucks, but also having space that they may be able to lease out, I guess. It's a combination, and so they're looking for funding, and I know they had talked to Julie about trying to get a grant. So I put it on the agenda. There's no action required. I just want to know, I want everybody to know that it's at least being discussed, and they're back to us, which is a good thing. I know the town of Schoharies, talked to them, or the planning board or both. I did see the other day driving by that there seemed to be some action there. I don't know if it was just because of coincidental. There was, I want to say a bulldozer or something, or just a backhoe or something, but what you mean? It could have just been parked there, or it could be there for a reason. I don't know. But I guess what I'm saying is that at least things are being discussed. So maybe there's hope yet for this thing to keep moving forward. And I know the town probably still wants that because the trucks are still parked there out in the open, which that's not what part of the deal was initially. So hopefully a building can be forthcoming, but we'll see. It's a fluid thing at this moment.
They are doing work on the site. There's been a bulldozer and a sort of a steam shovel digging around, and they've got stakes out and things like that. So I think they've taken down some trees. So they've sort of acceded to the request of the town of Schoharie to show actual movement on the project. So
hopefully that's a positive sign.
yeah.
So that's it for now, unless other comments. But
Any other comments? Let's move on to the next item, which is election of officers.
I mean, the ad hoc nominating committee is respectfully requesting that the current board of directors remain as is, and the current officers remain as is, or be renominated as in Chairman Chester Burton, Vice Chair Joe Trapani, Treasurer Wanda King, and Secretary Sarah Nickel. And that would be the slate as we speak. There's one proposed slate. Let me put it that way. Nominating committee is suggesting that if anybody wants to make that motion.
I'm happy to make that motion.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The current officers will move on for another year.
You re-upped everybody.
All right.
Same salary, right? Same salary.
Yes.
That's right.
100% increase, Joe.
Thanks.
Any other items that we need to talk about here?
Not on my agenda, unless anybody has something to bring up.
Can we set the date for the next meeting? When would be a reasonable time to get input back from SSI, you believe?
Well, I think it's up to everybody, but sometime in February, I would think. I think we ought to keep it monthly, at least until further progress is made.
February 16th?
Okay for me.
Looks good to me.
Okay for me.
Good for me too. And we'll probably still be a remote condition by February 16th. I can't imagine we would meet personally. So that's fine.
I agree.
That day isn't the greatest for me. Is it the 17th open?
Yeah.
17th 17th's good for me.
Yep.
Should say it's not open, but it could be wide open with COVID.
Yeah, the 17th is good for me too.
All right, now that, I guess, concludes our items. I'd like to go into executive session at this point. Good
This
discussion.
conference will now be recorded.
All right, last item on the agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion to do so?
I'll move that.
Is there a second?
I
I'll
can
second.
second that.
We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.
Okay.